I was trying to build like a model of what we're experiencing, and I like your dream one to start, but there's a lot of things that don't make sense in that model. Like the way I was experiencing it is like right now we're in a kind of dream, right? Where I think I'm a character in this meditation retreat, but that doesn't. So everything around us is just my knowing of it. So the only substance is knowing. But that doesn't explain the other characters in the dream. Like when I look at some of the characters, I see a certain familiarity, but the dream model doesn't really take that into account because there's multiple knowings happening from the mind, or there's kind of different windows of the same knowing. Or can you kind of explain that?
Multiple refractions of the same knowing. Each of our mind is like a window or a refraction of the same knowing.
So the dream analogy breaks down in that point because...
Yes. Like all analogies, the dream analogy is limited. There are no accurate models of reality. But this dream analogy has more explanatory power than any other model I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as from this point of view, it's like the dream. But now, when I try to see like a bigger picture of the other knowings happening...
Your mind cannot see the bigger picture because the mind imposes its own small picture on everything that it knows. So with your mind, you cannot see the bigger picture. Everything you see with your mind is an expression of the limitations of your mind, and your mind is small. So everything you know, that's why reality appears in accordance with or as an objectification of the limitations of your own mind.
So it seems like I'm hitting a block as far as the path of truth, and it's hard for me to empathize, when people start, I don't know, I watch emoji videos and people cry and things, and it's hard for me to follow that kind of path, but it feels like...
But don't follow that path. Don't follow any path that doesn't resonate with you, that doesn't feel right to you.
The path of truth, like you just said, the mind can't understand that, but...
That is true, but when the mind is struck by truth, there is a cracking or a breaking or a letting go of the structure of the mind. And that letting go, in some people, expresses itself it has a visceral effect on the body and expresses itself as laughter or tears. So it may not express itself in that way in you, but in others, that same understanding can express itself in tears. I'm not suggesting that all shows of tears are an expression of a mind that has been struck by truth, but sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When you said yesterday that the highest teaching is silence, can you step a
Can
little...
I say anything about that? No, I can't.
What was that? Can you step back a little bit from that, meaning that just knowing, so then you wouldn't say anything? Or what does the Rabbana Maharshi mean when the highest teaching is silence exactly?
It means that truth cannot be formulated by the mind.
So me just staring at you.
The mind is something limited, yes? So anything that it perceives or conceives appears in a form that is consistent with its own limitations. You understand that? So that the mind, by definition, cannot know reality as it is prior to the arising of mind, because everything that appears in the mind is subject to the mind. King Lear cannot know John Smith. Because everything that King Lear knows is filtered through the character of King Lear. He can know his daughters, he can know his kingdom, but he cannot know John Smith, because he is a limitation of John Smith.
Okay.
Nothing that appears in King Lear's world tells us about the nature of John Smith.
Okay, the hard part is that when there's a visual perception, I'm not knowing, I guess not knowing deliberately every single thing that's happening because it's too complex.
Yes. Because your mind is finite, likewise all minds.
But it's like I'm still seeing the image,
Yes,
but I can't focus on all the details.
absolutely. But what is the nature of the knowing with which the perception is known?
So it's just relaxing. It's not even relaxing the attention, it's more...
But what is the nature of the knowing with which the perception is limited. The appearance of the perception is limited. But what is the nature of the knowing with which the perception is known and ultimately out of which the perception is made? Nothing that appears in perception tells us about the nature of the knowing with which the perception is known and made. Nothing that appears in the movie tells us about the nature of the screen. The screen never appears in the movie.
So it's almost like, trying to go to that place as...
You can't go to that place. No.
It's just
You remember,
recognizing...
you remember the story of the... you'll understand this, Stephen, the American traveling in England. He comes across a remote farm and knocks on the farmer's door, and he asks the farmers, "How do I get to London from here?" And the farmer thinks for a while, and he says, "I'm sorry, you can't get to London from here." You can't go there with your mind.
So it's just recognizing that, or...
No, you have to do more than simply recognize that your mind cannot know the nature of reality. We know the nature of the reality through a different channel. King Lear cannot go to John Smith as King Lear, because in order for John Smith to be known, King Lear must vanish. King Lear cannot go there. King Lear cannot go to John Smith and say, "I, King Lear, know that I am John Smith." No, King Lear has to cease being King Lear before the revelation, "I am John Smith," appears. But it is never King Lear that knows, "I am John Smith." It is John Smith that has the experience, "I am John Smith."
But it's such a paradox because it
It
feels
is a
like
paradox,
I'm
yeah.
doing something here and we can't...
It is, as a concession to King Lear's belief, "I am King Lear." His friend gives him something to do. What does he give him to do? He either says, "Surrender everything that is not essential to you." And when you have surrendered everything that is not essential to you, the knowledge, "I am John Smith," will shine by itself. That's one path, the path of surrender. The other path is investigate the nature of your own mind. That's the path of self-inquiry. What is it that is essential to you? You are not your thoughts. You are not your relationship with your daughters. You are not the powers you have as a king. What are you when you trace your way back to your essential self? Well, these are the two paths, the path of devotion and the path of knowledge, the path of surrender and the path of self-inquiry. So yes, for King Lear, there is something to do. Surrender yourself or investigate the nature of yourself.
Okay.
But that's just a concession to King Lear. It is not meant to imply that one day King Lear will recognize his true nature. No, King Lear has to disappear for his true nature, John Smith, to be revealed.
Yeah. And I've heard you describe, like there's two stages. One where you separate yourself, and then the merging state.
Yes. What I've just described now, the path of surrender or the path of self-inquiry, is the first stage, the inward-facing path, the return, the path of return, the great death, as it's called in the Zen tradition. It's the going back from the person we believed and felt ourselves to be, to our essential self. Then the great rebirth, the transfiguration, is when we turn outwards again towards experience and incorporate our new understanding in all realms of experience.
So it's like making sure you don't lose it's making sure you don't lose yourself in different experiences.
Yes, to begin with, the position in which most people find themselves is that what they essentially are, awareness, is completely lost in or merged with experience. This is the condition of an animal or an infant and most adults, completely lost in experience. All there is to my experience are thoughts, sensations, perceptions, activities, relationships. So the first thing we do is we separate out awareness from experience. I am not identical to my experience. I am that which knows it. That's step one. Second step, now we explore the nature of the one who knows experience.
Can you describe what it felt like when you did the first step? Like, to me, it's almost like I'm in a dream, right? And
Yes, the first step. I thought I was my thoughts. I thought I was my feelings, my activities, my relationships. But every time a thought comes to an end, it vanishes. But I remain. Therefore, my thoughts cannot be essential to me. If my thoughts were essential to me, then every time a thought disappeared, then I would feel that a little bit of myself disappeared with it. But I don't feel that. I feel that I remain intact, full, complete, whole, when a thought leaves me. Therefore, thoughts are not essential to me. In between two thoughts, I continue to exist. I'm obviously not my thoughts or their content. The content of my thoughts are irrelevant to what I am.
So whether
I vote Republican or Democrat is completely irrelevant to what I am. And then going a little bit deeper, but actually the same is true of my feelings. Whether I'm feeling sad or lonely or excited, or whether I'm madly in love or I've just broken up with a relationship, or whether I feel nervous or anxious, all these feelings come and go. But when a feeling disappears, I don't feel that a little bit of me goes with it. I remain intact. So, my feelings, they're not essential to me, and nor are my relationships, my most precious relationships. None of them are essential to me. I don't need any of them to be essentially myself. So in this way, I go back and back and back. And then when you've surrendered or let go of or discarded everything that is superfluous to you, what remains, what cannot be discarded, that is what I essentially am. It's not a thought, it's not a feeling, it's not a sensation, it's not a perception, it's not an activity, it's not a relationship. It's not anything that I can describe with my mind, and yet I have the absolute certainty, more certain than I am of anything else, that whatever I am, I am. And that is my essential self, if we can call it a self.
But even having that realization, then you have to go, you'll still get caught up in the...
Yes, so then you go back to experience, and the first thing first time your partner doesn't smile at you in the way you want him or her to smile, or the first time your friend does something, you find there is this reaction. You feel hurt, and then you think, but hang on, who is it that is hurt? I thought that I had just discovered myself as this openness without form. How can something without any form be hurt? So on whose behalf is my hurt arising? When I say I feel hurt, there's a contradiction. 2 minutes ago I said I just recognize my true nature. I'm just this being, this openness, without form, without content. And now, 2 minutes later, I feel hurt. There is a discrepancy. Which am I? Which am I really? So so you go back. Am I really the feeling of hurt? Is the feeling of hurt essential to me? No. I exist independent, prior to, during, and after the feeling of hurt. So I am obviously essentially this unhurtable presence. So then you think, okay, well, now I don't just want to know that in the privacy of my own heart. I want to behave in life in a way that is consistent with this understanding. So next time our partner says something to us and we feel the impulse again to feel hurt and to make some quippy comment back or something, pause, hold up, am I really the person that is hurt, or am I this open, resistanceless presence? And you may not catch it, you may snap back at your partner and then realize 5 minutes later, so then you say, okay, no, sorry, I didn't mean what I said, but more and more you catch the impulse to respond on behalf of to react on behalf of the separate self earlier and earlier, until at some point you notice the impulse before you vocalize the reaction. And then as you notice the impulse, that you no longer have to say to yourself, am I this hurt reaction? Or it's instantaneous. You notice it, you go back to your true nature, and the conflict drops.
Okay, now sometimes, for example, say I'm at home and it's late at night and I have the urge to, for example, smoke weed or something to kind of escape my...
Okay, well, I would encourage you then, sorry to, but I've already intuited your question. I would encourage you feel the impulse to smoke weed. You have two possibilities. It's a two-way street. You can either go towards the weed, and you've already said you understand that the impulse comes from some feeling of avoidance.
Well, it's hard to tell, right?
Hang on. You either you either go for the joint, or you turn towards the feeling that you are trying to escape from by smoking the weed. There is some sense of lack. Something is lacking. Something is missing. I want to change my current state for a new state. In other words, I believe that the happiness I seek lives in the future and can be brought about by smoking a joint. So instead of smoking the joint, you go in the other direction. You go towards the feeling of lack that impels you towards the substance. And because what you really want is on the other side of the feeling of lack. It is behind the feeling of lack. Nothing you do that is downstream of the feeling of lack will help you. The weed, as you know, will temporarily put an end to the feeling of lack, but as soon as the effect of the weed has worn off, the feeling of lack will rise up again. If you want permanent relief from the feeling of lack, you have to go in the other direction, upstream. You have to go to that which is prior to the feeling of lack. That is where the peace you long for resides.
But it creates a sort of paradox, because there's times to, or like, smoke weed to celebrate, or like try to kiss a girl, because it's not a sense of lack, it's just, see, when do you know if it's coming from
in
a sense
both
of
cases, I would err on the side of caution. If there's any doubt at all, don't.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, you get like...
I know exactly what you're saying. If there's any doubt at all, don't.
But it could just be like nervousness, or like, okay. But, okay, so, it's almost like, when would you smoke weed? See, that's what I'm...
You're asking the wrong guy.
Or meaning, like, when would you do anything? If we're completely fulfilled that I know you get this question a lot. Like, yeah, if you're completely fulfilled, you're inspired to do certain things.
Yes, but when you feel completely fulfilled, your happiness is, or your love is irrepressible. You never ask the question, should I do this or should I not do it? You cannot help yourself. You just express it. I mean, did you notice Ryan last night pausing, wondering, shall I dance this evening or not? I mean, no, it's just this irrepressible flow. Or if you feel love, do you ever pause and negotiate whether you should express your love or not? No, so if you have to ask the question, it means that the action that you're taking doesn't really come from happiness or love. It is seeking happiness or love.
I think that answers my question. Yeah. I find myself like getting caught up in thoughts. Yeah. So
yes, you're trying to. You're being. I mean, I respect that you're trying to analyze and to be very precise. That's beautiful. But I think you're overthinking it. Mm-hmm. Does the activity I'm about to engage in, the activity or the relationship I'm about to engage in, does it come from a sense of lack, or does it come from a sense of fullness? If it comes from a sense of lack, instead of fulfilling the activity, instead of going towards the activity, the substance, the relationship, turn in the other direction, investigate the sense of lack. Or more importantly, the self, the one that says, I don't like this, I don't have enough, I want something that is not present. That is the phantom self on whose behalf the sense of lack rises. Discover the true self that is upstream of the phantom self. And then when you feel established in that, then trust the feelings that come from that. And those feelings that they're safe. Allow your activities and relationships to be informed by that, not by a sense of lack.
Mm-hmm. It's almost, there's like an intermediate period where I always have to just keep going back before I could go out.
Yes, but don't let it cripple you. I'm not suggesting that you spend the next 2 years in your bedroom investigating the sense of lack. You go back, you explore yourself, then you go out into life, then you go back again. So you keep, but every time you go back out into life, into activities and relationships, your activities and relationships are informed by your deepening understanding of yourself. So I don't mean to suggest that you don't go out towards activities and relationships. I would perhaps suggest cutting out weed, but...
Yeah. Okay.
Because your weed is giving you an artificially induced sense of peace and happiness. And even though you think, I am doing this consciously and everything, you're every time you go there, you are reinforcing the habit of deriving happiness from objects or substances. So I would recommend that as you feel that impulse, you don't do what the impulse is telling you to do, but you turn around in the other direction. And it will be difficult, intense to begin with, because there is obviously this habit that is used to being fulfilled. So your body will go into a little spasm of rebellion, and your mind will try to justify that rebellion in all sorts of ways. It's okay to do this. I'm aware of that I am the one that knows my experience. Don't let your mind play that trick on you.
Thank you. Yeah, you answered my question.